I'm delighted to be joined now by Deputy PM Oliver Dowden, the Conservative MP for Hertsmere. Mr Dowden, lovely to see you this morning. Thank you for joining me. Let's kick off with Lee Anderson then.
Good morning, Camilla.
Is he an Islamophobe as far as you're concerned?
No, I don't believe that Lee Anderson is an Islamophobe, but words matter, and the choice of words that he used, the choice of words that he used was not appropriate. He was given the opportunity to apologise, didn't take that opportunity, and therefore the Chief Whip took the decision to remove the whip from him.
But why would you remove the whip from him when you say he isn't an Islamophobe? I mean, surely it's a free country. He can express himself how he likes. He said that he thought he expressed himself clumsily, but as far as I can tell, he hasn't said anything really that Suella Braverman, the former Home Secretary, has said.
Well, I think the difference between what he said and what Suella said was about specifically targeting one individual. And believe me, I have huge problems with Sadiq Khan. I experience it pretty much every day, his war on the motorists or his failure to build houses in London because of his absurd affordability requirements. But linking the two through religion, I think that's something that Lee himself has accepted. He was given that opportunity to apologise, and he didn't do so, so the whip has been suspended.
Why wasn't the whip suspended from Zach Goldsmith during the 2016 campaign, or at least why wasn't he sanctioned by the Tory party when he made very similar remarks about Sadiq Khan? He said about the London mayor that he was giving cover to extremists. He said Sadiq Khan had, quotes, given platforms, oxygen and even cover over and over again to those who seek to do our police and capital harm. He then suggested that Khan had, quotes, tried to silence questions about his links to extremists by shamelessly accusing anyone who raises them of being Islamophobic. Zach Goldsmith has been far more strident in his criticism of Sadiq Khan's links to, quotes, extremists than Lee Anderson. So why wasn't he removed of the whip and sanctioned by the Tory party? He was running as your London mayor at the time.
Well, Camilla, we're going back quite a long way, and you're testing my memory of what happened during that campaign.
Well, I've just
what I would
told
say
you
about
what happened.
the quotes that you use, what I would say about the quotes that you've used there and relayed to me is that there is this difference between, by the way, I support robust political debate and robust exchange of views and robust questions being asked, as opposed to linking specifically to this point about Sadiq Khan's mates and the concern about the implication of that. As I say, I don't believe that Lee Anderson was motivated by Islamophobia, but there is concern about that language. He was given the opportunity to apologise. By his own admission, he said that it was clumsy language. His failure to do so led to the whip being suspended from him.
But I'm just pointing out the inconsistency in the disciplinary process here, that Zach Goldsmith said actually in stronger terms that Sadiq Khan was linked to extremists than Lee Anderson has, and yet he faced no sanction. Is it maybe that you feel that Lee Anderson isn't quite the right fit for the Tory party, that he's a bit rough around the edges, that he speaks his mind, and it's all a bit too sort of honest for the constituency and indeed for the Tory public?
No, I mean, nothing could be further from the truth than that. And actually, I have great sympathy and indeed agree with the underlying sentiments, although I wouldn't choose their language, from both Suella Braverman and from Lee Anderson. You and I have talked before about how we grew up in Hertfordshire. And the values of the country that we know and love. I don't think any of us would have imagined that in our lifetimes, debates in Parliament were being threatened by threats of violence against members of Parliament. And this forms part of a chain that we have seen, whether it's Jews in my constituency afraid to walk the streets because they're showing symbols of their religion, or it's those hate-filled marches where people still walk alongside them on the marches but don't call it out. And we, all of us, of course there's a law enforcement response to this, but there's also underlying questions about the sort of society we live in and all of our responsibility to call this kind of conduct out.
I know, but Mr Dowden, it's all very well giving giving a commentary of what's going on. We're all familiar with what's going on. We all saw Big Ben lit up with the words "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free" a few days ago. What are you actually going to do about it?
Well, that was totally unacceptable, using that clearly anti-Semitic trope. And I was waiting for a while to come on to your interview. I was listening to your interview with Len McCluskey. There still seems to be some sort of equivocation about that. It is undoubtedly anti-Semitic. The police are obviously operationally independent, but I know that the Home Secretary has taken this up with the police. What I would say in relation to a lot of these, and I often find myself discussing this with constituents, just because immediate action isn't taken doesn't mean action isn't being taken. So, for example, it is a case that there have been over 600 arrests. There are over 200 ongoing live investigations in relation to some of these offensive conduct. For example, one of them has been publicised, these people that were wearing the parachutists' insignia on their clothing. So action is being taken. It's not always obvious that that is being taken immediately.
Well, but shouldn't it have been taken immediately in the case of projecting onto Big Ben? I mean, that is probably one of the most recognisable London landmarks. Shouldn't it have been taken at the time? I mean, shouldn't the police have stopped it? Yes,
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you, and they should have done. And the Home Secretary has made that point to the police. Obviously, we live in a society, and I think it is right that we live in a society where the police are operationally independent. They have to take the decisions as to how they conduct their operations. But the Home Secretary has left the police in no doubt at all that they should take action in respect of this.
But this must be frustrating for you, because we read in the Sunday Express today that this operation to police these marches is costing 30 million. I had your former colleague, Suella Braverman, in the studio a few weeks ago saying the police have the powers to stop this, and they aren't using them. So how much pressure is the Prime Minister and others piling on the police to say use these powers, stop these marches, stop people from chanting these anti-Semitic slogans in the street? Because I'm afraid the government does look quite weak on this. We had Tower Bridge closed down yesterday. We've got these offensive slogans projected onto Big Ben. Why aren't the government doing more? Why aren't you forcing the police to use the powers they have?
Well, I think there's two elements. So one is that putting pressure on the police to take action. As I said to you in my previous answer, it genuinely is the case that the police are taking lots of action, over 600 arrests. There is always more for them to do, and we're pushing for that. In addition, we're looking at gaps where there are insufficient powers. So, for example, clambering onto war memorials and making sure that is clearly illegal. There's a more fundamental question. There is an issue of debate. I do have some sympathy for people that say we should just ban these marches altogether. I think we have freedom of expression in this country, so I wouldn't favour banning the marches altogether, but I do favour robust policing. As I say, sometimes you don't see that immediately, but it is these people are being held to account. And I think what you'll see in the coming weeks and months is more and more of these prosecutions finding their way into court, and people will see there is action that is flowing from it.
OK, final question on Mr Anderson, Mr Dowden. Would you like to see him join Reform? Nigel Farage says he's welcome there with open arms.
No, I certainly wouldn't. And I think that all of us who share the concerns and the anger about how what is happening in our democracy right now need a government that is robust in response to it. I don't have confidence, given what you saw last week, the meeting that Keir Starmer had with the Speaker, him urging him to change parliamentary procedure. I don't have confidence that there will be that robustness from Keir Starmer. In the end, that's the choice, Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer, and I think we should unite together.
If you don't want to see Lee Anderson go to Reform, what should he do then? Is he going to be allowed back into the Conservative Party if he shows more contrition?
Well, that's a matter for the Chief Whip, but we've set out the reasons why the whip was drawn was that failure to apologise. That's a matter for Lee Anderson. You can't
rule out him having the whip returned. He may have the whip returned, will he, if he apologises?
No, I certainly wouldn't rule that out, but that's a matter for the Chief Whip.
OK. Mr Dowden, thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning.